High up on the Alpine summits, wild creatures have adapted to survive in extreme conditions. One amongst them chose the crags, great rock walls, defying gravity and the void. They have lived alongside man for thousands of years, but nearly disappeared completely. Nowadays, they roam the summits freely and have become the symbol of grand protected spaces. The Alpine Ibex. Spring has arrived on the slopes. High up, a large grazing herd follows in the footsteps of their ancestors. A sight which almost vanished, for once there were less than 50 Alpine Ibex scattered throughout the Alps. Unworried by the threat that once hung over them, the Alpine Ibex simply take advantage of spring and try to get rid of their thick winter hair. Sessions of scraping and sliding the length of the slope. This long molt, lasting several months, allows them to keep a thick coat in case bad weather returns up high. Beyond the mist, there are moving silhouettes with smaller horns. The females, or nanny goats, are also grouped in a herd. They weigh around 50 kilos, half the weight of the large males. In the month of June, the females leave the herd. Each one finds a space alone in a hidden corner of the rocks. Up high, they give birth, sheltered from the sight of predators. From the belly of this young female, a little goat will emerge. Ibex discovers the mountains. On the great cliff, he has managed to stand on his little paws after a few hours. After 3 days, he can already follow his mother wherever she goes. Now that he's 2 weeks old, the rock wall has become his dizzying playground. With such agility, it seems that he is able to fly above the rocks. but the goats were once sought after by different countries. The very last Alpine Ibex survived in the Royal Reserve of Victor Emmanuel, Gran Paradiso National Park in Italy. Switzerland wanted to reintroduce the animal, but Italy didn't want to part with a single goat. So, with the lure of profit, smuggling became organized, and men traveled through the mountains, sometimes at the risk of their lives, seeking the rare beasts. Captured alive, the goat traveled on men's backs. The price of a goat was the equivalent of 30,000 euros in zoos in Switzerland. From 1880 to 1940, around 200 animals transited in this way. From zoos and national parks, the species was reintroduced in different parts of the Alps. And strangely enough, in the end, Italy had to buy goats back from Switzerland to strengthen its population. So, nowadays all the Alpine Ibex are descendants of the Ibex from Gran Paradiso, some having passed through zoos before returning to the wild. However, recent genetic studies have revealed that a very small population core probably survived in France, in the hidden places of the Grande Casse Glacier, where the Vanoise Park was created in 1963 to save the species. At the start of summer, the Ibex joins a group of goats spending their time on the rocky ridges. High up, every day he finds out a little more about his environment. From the Alpine choughs, who sing their song in the breeze, to the discreet wall creeper, a colourful bird that spins about in search of insects. The goats are constantly under the watchful eye of their mother. And be careful not to get in the way at all. Ibex often demands this good, rich milk, which will let him gain 10 kilos during summer. But better take care. The void isn't the greatest danger of the rock walls. The royal eagle can carry off the youngest goats. But at the age of 1 month, Ibex is already too heavy. Today, the eagle is rather looking for groundhogs to feed its little eaglets. Its nest is sited lower than its hunting ground, so that it can always bring back the prey. At this period of the year, all the wildlife is in effervescence. There are chamois and spotted woodpeckers, ants and voles. An ibex with spread out horns sometimes comes beside the nest of peaks. His unusual silhouette recalls that of his cousin, the Iberian ibex, which was reintroduced into the French Pyrenees in 2014. Slightly smaller than that of the Alps, with horns that are more curved, the Iberian ibex roams the Pyrenees once more, thanks to several releases and scientific follow-up. In the middle of summer, the ibex reaches its highest zone of altitude. At 2,800 meters, he watches the herd of males lying down below him. Knocked out by the heat, they are resting. The hooves that usually clamber up the great cliffs are at rest. It is of course this foot, with a supple and rugged interior, a semi-rigid rim, and no membrane between the two nails so as to adapt perfectly to the shape of the rock, which allows them to keep their balance. The ibex doze under the weight of their large horns. These appear at birth and grow throughout their lives. They can reach a meter in length and weigh several kilos. Contrary to popular wisdom, it's not the bumps that indicate the age of the ibex, but fine, deep grooves. It's siesta time. But on the slope, the groundhogs have decided otherwise. The tiny groundhogs are out and about. The great wingspan of tawny vultures has scared the groundhogs. But another animal has arrived on the Alpine Ibex's territory. Ibex prefers to climb up the rock wall, there where he knows that humans are not quite at ease. The large males are a lot less afraid, which makes the trampers happy. Protected now for many years, the Alpine Ibex can easily be approached. One of the particular aspects of this species is to be able to adapt its movements according to the weather. The Alpine Ibex is hypersensitive to the slightest change in air pressure. They can stay and graze when there are large menacing clouds, or on the contrary, all go and shelter in the rocks when strong sunshine plays over the slope. And each time they are right. If they're in shelter, the storm can arrive without warning. Rain, hail, even snow in the middle of summer. From one day to the next, the mountain is transformed. The Ibex moved before the snow had even begun to fall. And this morning, just one track is to be seen towards the summits. A rock amongst rocks, the invisible mountain hare is hidden. It's in its summer coat and warms itself in this July snow. A far cry from the hoof of the ibex for balancing acts, it has large paws which act as snowshoes to move on the snow. After 3 hours spent warming in the sun, the little white coat returns with quick movements into a crack in the rock. Invisible to the eyes of predators, invisible to the eyes of trampers. It's at the age of 4, when he has joined the group of males, that Ibex encounters the unexpected. A disturbance comes to the slopes. A wolf is there. All the ibex follow it with their eyes, but not one takes off at a run. The wolf had vanished from the Alps and made its return after 1992. But while chamois, deer, groundhogs and hares regularly make up its menu, curiously, very few remains of ibex are found. The wolf might fear their large horns, falling rocks, or the void they are close to every day. So, when calm returns, ibex and the others go back to their grazing area. In the gleams of evening, between light and shadow. As much as possible has to be eaten, beginning already to prepare themselves for winter. Because summer is short in the mountains. The days are already getting shorter. The first frosts grip the summits. And the forest is starting to transform. The bellow of great stags brings autumn, and the Alpine Ibex begin to change territory, crossing the path of a few chamois here and there. This year, a flock of mountain sheep have arrived on the Ibex territory. An interesting encounter between the Ibex, saved from extinction, and the mountain sheep introduced by man to France for hunting. It so happens that a hunting dog arriving on the slope scares the sheep. The Ibex decide to face up to it. Their large horns could be enough to come out on top. They take refuge in inaccessible rocks. This worked against bows or lances, but the development of firearms decimated them. They were hunted for their meat, especially in wartime, but also for their immense trophies and for many beliefs. Amongst other things, they possess a cartilage in the form of a cross inside their hearts, which was sought as a talisman. But the banning of hunting doesn't mean overpopulation for the ibex, because it's one of the rare species which auto-regulate themselves, adapting the number of births according to population density. However, in the fine days at the end of autumn, some signs are unmistakable. The males join the flock of females, horns rubbed against the vegetation, tails curved along the back, head held back. These are the signs of the mating season. Ibex is 10 years old when he can try to take part in the mating. The scent of the females attracts him irresistibly. And he can easily impose himself over a much younger male. Upon the ridges, he attempts seduction. But this display does not remain unseen by the dominant male. With an injury on his forepaw from a fight, the large male moves up towards Ibex. The dominant is heavier than him. But seeing his worn horns and his injury, Ibex can try to win. Tension rises on the slope. Each powerful blow inflicted by the dominant male pushes Ibex further back. The situation becomes too dangerous, and Ibex prefers to give in. This year, the hierarchy won't change. And in this vertiginous world, it's only after several years that Ibex will manage to dominate, after epic combats begun in the moonshine and continuing to the last breath in the light of the dawn. But the arrival of a female beside the combat gives new strength to Ibex. Ibex dominates his adversary once again and pushes him to the limit. Caught in the rocks, a last strike of horns is enough for Ibex to win. Ibex becomes Prince of the Void. Now, as the dominant male, he can approach the females, and in the herd, all the other males move out of his way. Excitement is at its peak in the mountains. All the most handsome males of the area are there. Sticking out the tongue lets them know if the time is right, thanks to certain receptors. But it's not as easy as all that, because the nanny goats are receptive only 24 hours a year. The greatest part of mating takes place in December. At this time, the Alpine Ibex are wearing their thick winter coats made up of 4 kinds of hair. 2 hairs of stuffing, thicker, like a duvet, which insulates the skin, and 2 guard hairs, longer, which let the Ibex face large winter storms. So, what must happen, happens. And the snow surprises the Alpine Ibex in the middle of mating. It's difficult to follow the females in these conditions. The flakes reduce visibility. Each step is dangerous. And Ibex isn't the only one after the females. Much lighter than the males, this nanny can reach inaccessible areas. So the two males turn back, and Ibex tries to find another way up, perhaps even more dangerous. From now on, everyone has to face the elements. Life must survive. Winter takes over. Everything is white, immaculate. Some of the ibex stay up high, where the wind uncovers some tufts of grass on the rock walls, and others descend to the bottom of the valley. The tiniest amount of food has to be found, but it's above all the reserve of accumulated fat that will allow survival. But some of them have been deeply marked by the mating season. The broken horn of this male won't grow back. Energy has to be saved to survive the glacial cold. Ibex has survived the storm, but others were not so lucky. Avalanches, cold, and snowstorms have killed several alpine ibex. Alpine choughs fly looking for the victims of winter, along with royal eagles, or the immense bearded vulture which had once vanished from the Alps. The large wingspan of the bearded vulture spreads out above the carcass. But the coming of a second eagle will lead to friction. The rare bearded vulture is seeking bones. But a wingspan of 2.70 meters isn't always enough to be left alone by the large crows. This is the way of winter. The death of some ensures the survival of others. Buzzards, eagles, vultures, or foxes, a single ibex carcass can feed several species. The alpine winter is rigorous and forces a selection. But over the last few years, something is changing. Warmth comes frequently in the middle of winter. And beside ibex, although it is still falling, the snow melts. What happens to the bacteria and parasites usually killed by the cold? To the stability of the snow mantle with such variations in temperature? And the growth of grass earlier at high altitude, which will be less rich in summer when the goats need it? The heating could affect the Alpine Ibex. While waiting for that, the spring is still a great reward for those that have survived winter. The mating call of the black grouse wakes the mountain. With the return of spring, ibex guides the herd towards the heights. The return of rich vegetation is a reward. The Alpine Ibex graze night and day to get back their strength, and with such feasting, their full stomach can make an animal 20 kilograms heavier. On the grazing zones, Ibex sometimes meets young goats, which will be his successors. They only want to play because they have survived the cold season. Like a tightrope walker, a young Ibex walks on the trunk of a tree. Then a second one. And a third. But these games in the rocks can sometimes be very dangerous, and everything can change in a fraction of a second. It takes very little to find yourself in an instant under a rock that is larger than you are. With the rich nutrition of spring, the large males grow excited. But these rather friendly fights are nothing like the big combats of the mating season. At this period, the ibex spend most of their time resting. But this year, Ibex goes off alone from the herd. He goes to a secret place in the calm of the stream. Before dying alone. I followed him during all these years, seeing his tread raising dust, his coat shining in the last rays of the sun that he sometimes liked to chew. I remember the day that he came up to me. I could feel his breath on my hand. He ended up lying down, and he was so close that in his eyes I could see the shape of the mountain. He had accepted me. He will probably go to sleep like old dominants do, rocked by the calm of the water. After 20 years facing the void of the great rock faces, snowstorms, and the horns of the other males. Ibex has played his role, ensured his descendants. And today it's unexpected luck to be able to admire the Alpine Ibex roaming free and not stuffed in a museum as an extinct species. A simple story playing out up high that future generations mustn't forget, because a vanished species doesn't come back. The Alpine Ibex is luck. It bears witness to the fragility of the wild. But it is also hope. If we take care to protect what surrounds us, nature will give it back to us. Sometimes it's enough to lose yourself on a trail, to let yourself be guided, caught up by the form of the mountains. And who knows what any of the rocks might reveal. The wild awaits us, high up there, mysterious and magical, elusive and unpredictable.